Before going to Tibetan heart yoga, I wanted to say something about Rushen. Can somebody take that water bottle from the table? Yeah, thanks. So Rushen, the meaning of the word Rushen is to separate. And what? To separate what? Samsara and Nirvana. That's what Rushen is. So you all know how to do the practice, but I just wanted to talk about this a little bit to clarify the view a little bit. So Rushen is a Dzogchen practice, and common to all Dzogchen practices is that it is built on equanimity, and equanimity is the same as knowing.
How do you translate equanimity?
Equanimity, well, you could use it as a synonym for clarity. Equanimity is a bit different to directly translate to Finnish, but the meaning is the same as clarity. Clarity and stability. That's what equanimity means. So, for our practice to be a Dzogchen practice and Dzogchen path, it always needs to be built on that knowing. Knowing, which is awareness, which is the mother. Not the child, not mindfulness, but the mother. Awareness. So, this is crucial to understand. If we look at this group, for example, practicing Rushen, where you shake and twitch and you jump and you do seemingly weird things that people normally don't do, and you let all kinds of voices, utterings, gibberish, shouts, grunts, growls, do you say growling? Like when a dog, it's growling, right? So, Rushen is not going into a trance. If that knowing is there, knowing awareness, when you actually practice Rushen, then you don't go to trance. And also, it is not channeling of anything. Because, once again, it's based on your own awareness, on your own Buddha nature. And that knowing is Buddha nature. There's no other Buddha nature than the knowing. So this is like the starting point of all Dzogchen, the whole Dzogchen path. So in Dzogchen it's said that there is a, what other words, there is a starting point or base, then there is path, and then there is fruit. And I mentioned this briefly yesterday, that we take the fruit, the attainment, both as a starting point and as a path. It's that knowing, it's that Buddha nature right from the beginning. Like in mindfulness-based paths, well, it can be speculated whether they ever get to that fruition. I don't know, hopefully they do. But, with mindfulness you don't start from awareness. You start building from something else. Okay, so base, path and fruit. But then, if our understanding of ourselves and our limitations, if we are not realistic and willing to admit that we are samsaric beings, then we can make hasty, mental, logical deductions, logical reasonings that are unrealistic. That, well, if the beginning and the ending is the same, what use is there for practice? But this is just not being able to see one's own mind, spiritual bypassing. So, but if we are realistic and if we are, honest to ourselves, honest to our practice, then we can see that, stuff happens in the mind. And at moments, huge waves of emotions come up. We can feel those emotions, all this samsaric movement in our mind and in our body. So what Rushen is that you start releasing that, sorting that stuff, sorting out that stuff. This is just another way of doing the same thing as what is done with tantric practices and sutric practices. Well, Rushen is kind of a sutra practice because there's no empowerment for it. You empower yourself just by doing the practice. So, so we are not, it's not about going to trance or channeling. In some New Age methods, in the other religions, if you start Googling a little, you can find video footage, or maybe you've seen in person how, in some churches, for example, they do exactly the same thing, but because there's no equanimity, knowing, they go into trances and whatnot, becomes a mess. So what happens when we have that knowing, which when we do Rushen exercise, it means that we are completely aware what happens all the time. Even if our body is doing strange stuff, we are perfectly aware of it. We are not somehow in the background, going into some trance state or exalted state or, anything. You're perfectly present. And at any time, there's no spirit or entity or something taking your body or mind into possession. That's trance stuff. That's low level stuff. So Rushen is about separating samsara and nirvana, sorting out all of that stuff. And as I mentioned it briefly before, you start from this chaotic stuff, chaotic physical movement, chaotic sounds, voices. But then it develops, and especially because we are also tantric practitioners, we practice guru yoga, and you have received various empowerments to different deities that are your own. They are not gods or beings outside of you, but inside of you. Empowerment is just a way to activate or get this enlightened, liberated aspect of your own mind through those deities, through those parts and aspects of your own mind and awareness. Get them, what's the word? Igniting them. Ignition, ignite. So empowerment is not putting something external into your mind or into your body. It's just switching on these aspects of your own Buddha nature, peaceful and wrathful. So when Rushen, at some point, when your mind becomes clearer and clearer, your Rigpa, natural awareness, that knowing becomes more and more stable. In the case of open heart, it comes quickly because when you make your way to the 11th Bhumi, Rigpa already is very stable. It becomes your default mode. You can still have a lot of stuff going on, but there's no mistake whatsoever about the nature of your mind. So, in that sense, open heart path is fast because we open bhumis quickly. There's a lot of maturing to do after that, but that's another matter. So, when your Rushen develops this chaotic movement, samsaric sounds, starts to become, nirvanic, harmonious expression of your own natural state. Physical and energetic nirmanakaya and sambhogakaya expression of your own Buddha nature. So I'm talking about acting out deities, acting out Buddhas, not channeling them. You can just, if we talk about Tara or Avalokiteshvara or any of the Buddhas we have, they are your and our own mind, not deities, gods outside us. This might be difficult to understand until you actually start experiencing it. But it's just, I'm underlining that it's not channeling or going into a trance. So, at some point you might start doing spontaneous mudras, movements. You start seeing yourself as the deity, and this is important. It just happens. It comes about. You don't generate or visualize it. Like when somebody starts doing mudras, doing Rushen, you're not planning the movement. It's not a learned movement. It's spontaneous. It's spontaneous flowering. It's not an exercised ritual. So you start, like in tantric practice, we don't do that much deity visualization we do sometimes on retreats, and everybody who's received the empowerment can do it. You can visualize yourself as Vajrayogini or Dorje-Drolo. You can actually visualize your body, Dorje-Drolo's, Vajrayogini's, Avalokiteshvara's, White Tara's body, and that's like a typical tantric practice. Generating yourself as a deity. And then you do mudras, in general tantric practice there are some gestures, mudras, related to some certain deities, and also mantras. So there is visualization, mudra, and mantras. But this, with Rushen, with our approach, it comes spontaneously, comes automatically. And whether we all have received empowerment, tantric empowerment, but it should also come without the empowerment. Because, again, we are talking about our own Buddha nature and its various aspects of it, various frequencies, various chords of it. Chord, sointu. So, physically, moving as the deity, expressing yourself as the deity, seeing yourself as the deity without visualizing it, without generating that mental image, perhaps expressing the view of Buddha Dharma. Expressing the view means that, and again, this is not channeling, but you might know spontaneously, know some thoughts of that aspect of the Buddha nature, or the Buddha nature in general, expressing it. You know, there are loads of Buddhist texts that talk about different deities, like those that I mentioned, talking and giving teachings, right? In Mahayana texts and in Vajrayana texts. Many texts that says that Avalokiteshvara gave these teachings, or another Buddha gave these teachings. But it's our own Buddha nature. It's not some God, you know, coming. Or it's not some entity or being or a God that is channeled through. It's a huge difference there. I've said it 5-6 times during this, 10 minutes that I've been talking. So I really want to emphasize that. So, physical movement, physical expression of the Buddha nature, verbal expression, and then the visual expression. And as the basis of that is that knowing, that Dharmakaya aspect of Buddha nature. So there we have 3 kayas I mentioned: Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nirmanakaya, and they're flowering. Isn't it interesting? So when it's discussed these visions of deities, you know, it can be that you see yourself as the deity, or you can see just, you know, pure lands in front of you, mandalas, how do you say, is it retinue, like a company of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas? You can see it, you know, just like in the tankas, you have this, usually tankas look more or less the same. So you can actually see them. But it's your own mind. This is called pure vision. Pure vision. Purely seeing, feeling, sensing our own Sambhogakaya nature, which is the energetic nature. At that point, it's no longer, or if you have still some residual karmas, then you will still have some impulsive thoughts and emotions and visions of those. Visions of those. Do you understand what I mean? You can have, you know, nasty images in your mind, sudden images, you know, just, you know, messy energy. It's a mess. Mess is a good word. But when that mess is gone, when familiarization of our nature of mind is mature, this stuff becomes less and less. Our life with other people and things in our life becomes more direct and intimate in a sense, because there's not that mess going on that much. But also this flowering, like blooming of our, blooming through Rushen, you know, it develops into pure vision. Sometimes you might have heard of people who, you know, have these pure visions. Sometimes people very early on in their path have them, or when they are children, children can have pure visions. But there needs to be the distinction that it's not dualistic. It's non-dualistic all the time. So it's not like me receiving teachings from Avalokiteshvara or me channeling Avalokiteshvara. Avalokiteshvara is the Buddha or Bodhisattva of compassion. What is compassion? Compassion is like the equanimity always has to be there, the Dharmakaya equanimity. But Avalokiteshvara, Buddha of compassion, happens to be this kind of loving and very active, outwardly extending, caring energy of Buddha nature. That type of energy. We all have that as human beings. But Avalokiteshvara, that archetype, that Buddha is just an embodiment of that aspect of our humanity, aspect of our own mind. So yeah, it's not channeling Avalokiteshvara, receiving messages from Avalokiteshvara. Nothing like that. It's knowing ourselves as Avalokiteshvara. And at that moment, through that experience, through matured Rushen, you understand perfectly that Avalokiteshvara has nothing to do with India or China or Tibet or something like that. It has to do with us. Very personal. Okay. Wanted to say that I will stop the video and start a new one with Tibetan Heart Yoga practice guided.